I said, don't stop taking the work home with you. He goes, what? I said, no, what we're going to do is you're going to go to each member of your family and ask them, what can I do to improve the quality of our relationship?
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hitstreak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. And folks, I've got an extra special treat joining me in the Hit Lab today. Somebody I've been extremely excited to bring on the show, and somebody that I'm proud to call one of my great friends, folks. Check it out. All right, he is one of the most sought after faith-driven culture strategists, speakers, authors, and community leaders in the country. He's also the president of YMG Enterprises. All right, folks, he has dedicated his life to inspiring joy, purpose, and transformation in others. My man, Derek Young, we call him DY around here in these parts, folks. DY, thanks for hanging, baby.
Nick, I am fired up to be here. I'm so excited to be a part of the Hitstreak in the Hit Lab. I know we're going to have a great time.
First hit of the day, baby. We're batting 1,000.
Yes,
Here
sir.
we go. Well, I don't know if y'all can tell, but I'm feeling extra good today. You know what I'm saying? I think it's just because you're in the room. I feel like that's a thing.
I like that, brother. That's what you want. You want your energy to positively impact people everywhere you go. Whether you're in the Hit Lab, in the grocery store, that's what you want, so I'm excited.
All right, so I introduced you as one of the most sought-after faith-driven culture strategists, speakers, and authors and community leaders in the country, right? And where I first learned about you was your work from stage as a keynote speaker.
Yeah.
Those big corporations and companies, they love old DY. They love old DY.
You know, Nick, what I think about is an experience I had at Tractor Supply. Number one in its niche in farm and ranch sales. And I was doing a keynote for them at their corporate office in Tennessee. And at the end of the keynote, I had a woman approach me and she said, DY, I just want to tell you something. She said, the message you gave today from your book, Make My Hindsight Your 2020. She said, it's the first time in my life that I have actually felt that I could take control of my own career and my own future. She said, this is literally the first time in my life, and she said, I've had a good life and a good career, that I really realized that you just gave me steps that I can apply to have success in every area of my life. She said, I am going to be a better leader. She said, I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be a better wife and a better mother. So that for me, Nick, that's what it's all about. That's the whole game in a nutshell.
Well, it's like, that's how, at the end of the day, the feedback is everything, both the good and the ways to get better, right? And but when you go off and do something for a reason, for a purpose, and then you find out that it actually worked, it makes it all worth it.
You just said it, brother. Somebody asked me recently, they said, when did you know you were a keynote speaker? When did you know you had this ability to help people go to the next level? And I said, well, looking back, I can tell you where it really kicked off. My first job, 14 years old, I was a junior in high school because I started high school at 12. So I'm a 14-year-old high school junior, and I'm working at St. Louis University High School in the Upward Bound program.
Okay.
We had a kid, Nick, and his first name was Lindsay. I can't remember his last name, but his first name was Lindsay, and he could not add negative numbers. He couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
So the full-time math teacher who taught couldn't get it across. My counterpart, my fellow student who was also a counselor, who was the aide in that class, couldn't get. So they just said, send him to DY. Maybe he can figure something out. Man, I sat this kid down in the library of our high school, and I don't remember what I did, but Nick, when I taught him how to add those numbers, there was a gleam in his eye that I will never forget. And that's basically, man, what I'm trying to recreate every time I'm on stage.
Wow. It took me a while to kind of figure out my voice. Some days when I was taking the stage, I'd feel good. Some days it took me a while to get warmed up when I was out there.
Right.
And I was able to realize a lot of similarities in sports. A lot of times as a baseball player, I might give up the first at bat because I just wasn't dialed in and ready.
Right.
And it's like, all right, well, I got to fix that. But as a coach in sports, one of the most important things you got to do is you got to make sure everybody's aligned in the vision and,
right.
and knows what's on the line today. And that famous "go get them for the Gipper" speech.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And the way that I used to prepare for the team is the way that now I've learned to prepare to take the stage as a keynote speaker. And I'm like in infancy stages compared to where you're at with your experience on it. So I'm looking to learn a lot from you today.
You know what I would say to that is when you think about a speech, just actually get rid of the word speech and make it a conversation. And every conversation you have, think about it. You want to be genuine, right? You want to be relatable. You want to acquiesce. To me, it's one of the most underutilized words in America. And acquiesce simply means I want to talk to you based on what I know about you. So everything I say is designed based on my understanding of how you see the world, right? So what I find is a great keynote is a keynote where that person in the audience feels like, yeah, that dude is talking to me. That's my situation, right? And I think when people kind of boil it down and not make it, I'm doing a keynote, I'm doing a presentation, and they take all the pomp and circumstance and just make it like me and you right now, just two dudes rapping, two dudes talking.
Yeah.
It just helps the audience connect with the core message. That's what I found.
So you didn't know I was going to go this direction. However, I think it does need to be said, because based on what we're just talking about, how, players prepare for games certain ways, keynote speakers do the same things.
Right.
Some guys like to work out real hard before they take the stage and so on and so forth. But this kind of bleeds into how that everybody else in the world presents themselves. Okay, So here's what I'm talking about. So I'm bringing like endless amount of folks into this building on a regular basis. Dale up front, he books meetings with me and all the different shapes and sizes and types of people on earth. Okay. Right. And over time, when there's only so many meetings you can take in a day. So obviously you want to begin to get better at setting more quality meetings with quality people that are more in line with what you're trying to do right now.
That's right.
So, 50 meetings in a week that you can't do anything with at the end of the day it's either an investment or a waste. Right. So Dale and I have, again, he's one of my gatekeepers.
Right.
All right. One of his jobs is to make sure I'm spending time with people I should be spending time with. And this is something that like I'm really leaning on you to help me figure out today, because this is something as a brand builder that I'm always working with people to figure out. Some folks, when Dale has limited interaction with them, he'll come back to the back and he'll be like, that guy or that lady, that person really has their stuff together.
Right.
Versus somebody else where there might be some doubt in that.
That's real.
Off of the same, let's just say 5 to 7 minute conversation.
Yep.
You were one of those people that after the first conversation, that gentleman was polished, I think was the exact words that he used. That's a polished guy right there. Right. Like, because again, we're in partnerships with a lot of people, which means there's a lot of information and interaction happening in both directions. And we always do good on our part, but not everybody's good on theirs.
That's fair.
It's a learning thing. Dude, we didn't have that problem with you. It was so easy making for Dale to do what he needed to do with you to get things booked.
That's awesome.
All right. What's the difference in the people that are polished versus not polished?
That's really rich. So, Nick, what I tell any client I'm getting ready to work with for a keynote, I tell them at the end of the year, if your boss, your supervisor, your VP, your president, if they were to ask you, who was the easiest person to work with all this year? I want you to say, man, that Derek Young, man, that dude is just easy to work with, right? I think for me, I teach a lot on security versus insecurity.
Okay.
And I always say, Nick, if you had to get a job and you had two people you could choose from, and one was incompetent and one was insecure, but you had to work for one of them, I'd pick incompetent every time. I think when people have a certain level of security, not perfect, not I'm better than everybody else, but just a basic, I'm good with me, I'm good with who I am. I think that sets a certain stage when you meet somebody. And then secondly, similar to what I said before, when you show up with an interest in other people, and Dale and I hit it off. That's the other thing. We just kind of in the same age group, some of the same values, I could tell. But when your focus is not on yourself, but your focus is on what kind of energy are we creating here together, the both of us in this interaction, I think what that does is it helps people relax. I think it helps people feel safe, which to me is one of the greatest things you can do. And I think the other part of it too is I'm kind of old school, maybe with style and appearance, right? My mother told me I never met my grandfather on my mom's side. He died before I was born. But my mom said, boy, one thing you got from your granddaddy is that's you like to dress, right? And I just think your attire says a lot about who you are.
Yeah.
But it ought to be attire that you enjoy. You're not dressing for other people. You're dressing in a way that you really like it. And for me, I hope obviously that comes across.
DY, I'm amazed at how, like, you know, so many things. First of all, confidence is a skill. And it's a lot of times it's based on, you know, a memory of a previous success. Right. However, you know, the more disciplined I am with the things that I measure at home, whether it be working out with my kid, time spent with my kids and wife, what I ate, what I put in my body, a lot of my, like, if I got to spend the amount of time I wanted to with my family, took care of everybody at work, ate what I knew I was supposed to eat, got my workout in, the next day I got all the confidence in the world.
Right.
It just is what it is, versus the day where I'm like, you know, I didn't earn these donuts, but they're here. I don't want them to go to waste, so I'm going to eat them. And then the next day, I'm not as confident as I would have been had I not eaten them, because there's that subconsciously, there's that small piece of doubt in there because I know that I didn't do what I knew I should do. So I almost feel like a fraud a little bit.
You know what I think you're saying, Nick, is when we keep promises to other people, that makes us feel a certain way because of how those other people see us. But when we keep promises to ourselves, that's life at the top of the mountain, right? Because you can never get away from yourself. And no matter what it is, when you say, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I need to do, this is what's best for me, when you keep that promise to you, it's a motivator, man. It really helps you go forward.
Dude, like, you know, and self-talk, all the greatest at everything reference self-talk and how positive self-talk is, it affects your mindset. Your mindset is built up of the thoughts that you have.
That's right.
Right. And the more conscious thoughts you can have about where you're speaking good into the world about yourself and your abilities, the better things are. So as raising a teenage boy, this is, oh man, and I'm on it all the time. I'm like, you know, so he's time blocking. And, you know, let's say he on his sheet, he's going to wake up at 8 a.m. and he sleeps till 8:30, right? Well, what I'm trying to instill in him is, hey man, like as a baseball player, you're standing in the box, 2 outs in the 7th inning, winning runs on second base. And you're in the box and you're telling yourself, I got it. Right. I got this, I got this, I got this. Well, your brain don't know if you're telling the truth or not because you told it you were going to get up at 8 and you didn't.
That's a good example.
You know what I mean? You said you weren't going to eat those cookies and you did. Just like when Nick said, I was going to eat better and then I ate them donuts.
Right.
So at the end of the day, it's almost like how authentic. I think you're only going to be as authentic to others as you are to yourself.
Yep. You know what, Nick? I was doing a keynote. This has been years ago. This is in the early 90s. And I was speaking to 1,000 young people from all across North Carolina. It was a youth leadership event. And I made a statement. Don't remember what it was, but it led one of the kids in the front row to raise his hand. And I said, yeah. He goes, Mr. Young, I get the sense you don't like rap music. And I said, no, I don't dislike rap. I said, I just don't like some of the what I would call negative rap. Mm-hmm. I said, now listen, messaging. I said, listen, I realize those guys are rapping about their reality. Yeah. They're rapping about things that have happened. Mm. I said, but all I would ask you to think about, and if I could ever have an audience with them, I would say, is there anything more vile, evil, wicked than slavery in America? I said, but here's the interesting thing. There's 1,000 kids. Mm-hmm. I said, if anybody in this auditorium can name me one song written by enslaved people about slavery, I'll give you $1,000.
Wow. Dude.
Every song they sang was about freedom, hope, a brighter tomorrow. I said, there's a possibility. What if they had only sang about what was happening to them that was bad, that was horrible? So when you talked about the self-talk, man, I'm sitting here. I am literally sitting in your studio because of self-talk. When I was 12 years old, I told you I started high school. I had a kid who lived right up the street from me. Won't say his name because the world is small. Let's just say Kevin. And man, this guy dogged me out every day. I can't even repeat in public the stuff he used to say to me.
Yeah.
Because I was going to this school and you going out there and you think you're this and that. And that went on for 3 months solid. Nick, one day I was coming home. I had turned 13 and he was a month older than me. So he had turned 13. I was walking home and sure enough, he came out his screen door. There goes Derek Young. Man, you think you this. And you remember Popeye the Sailor? Remember how Popeye would say, that's all I can stand. I can't stand no more, right?
Yep.
Man, I dropped my books and I ran across the street right in his face. And he backed up like I was going to hit him. Nick, this came out of me. I hadn't rehearsed it. I hadn't thought about it. I said, look here, Kevin, you and I are the same age. How about we do this, bruh? When you're 30 years old and when I'm 30 years old, let's come back to this spot. You show me what you've done. I'll show you what I've done. And I walked off. Nick, at 30, I was marrying a sister from Spelman College in Vanderbilt, and he was in jail.
Wow.
So when you start talking about talking, self-talk, man, I'm with you.
I want to thank all of our loyal fans that spread across all 50 states and 14 different countries. It's absolutely amazing. Folks, help us keep spreading the word, right? Share your favorite episodes with friends and make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the Hitstreak on all digital platforms. Thanks again, and we look forward to more. We're all programmed through TV, radio, broadcasting, everything else. It's paid programming, literally what it's called.
Yep.
Right? We're programmed. And but like true freedom is when you're comfortable with yourself in the way that only you know what you're called to do. God created one. You got your own relationship with God. And at the end of the day, it took me a long time to get there, where I didn't care what other people thought. And you know, I get a lot of the shade that's thrown on social. Yours is coming.
Yep.
With all the haters out there, it's those, you know, it's great. I love it because it's great practice.
Right.
Because, you know, for 10 negative comments, there'll be, you know, 10x or 100x positive reinforcement to what you said. But for whatever reason, you only focus on those 10 negative ones and you forget about, and you take for granted the other ones. And it just goes to show you that you can't be, you can't be entitled to, or grateful for something that you're entitled for.
Yeah, you just said a lot. I mean, here's the reality. You don't even know you've hit a new level until you have haters. That's the definition of hater. One who sits on the sideline waiting for someone to excel.
That's right.
Right? That's what gives them juice and energy, because they choose to not look at how great they are. Mm-hmm. They choose to not maximize how wonderful they are. So what they do with all that potential and energy they have is they flip it and they use your success, your progress, your growth, and they let it reflect back on what they aren't doing.
Yeah.
And it just motivates that negative juice. So, you know, as a keynote speaker, I'm up for 30, 45, 60, maybe 90 minutes with a group of 100, 1,000 people. And in that time, I have an opportunity to convince them that basically you should live your life based on a legacy. Based on a calling. I think we often, Nick, confuse the word calling and career. If I say dentist, person's going to say, well, their calling is fixing teeth. No, that's their career. Their calling is increasing physical health, improving self-esteem.
That's right.
Michael Jordan, everybody knows Michael Jordan, whether you know basketball or not. People say, well, clearly his calling was basketball. No, that was his career. His calling was inspiring greatness. Even Tom Brady said Michael Jordan has 6 championships, so I wanted 7. So as you talked about that, Nick, it just strikes me that my role, my job, my desire is to help that audience understand that no matter how bad it is, how horrible it's been, how screwed up things are, there is something in you that you can draw on, you can pull on to make your own situation better. And I've been doing this so long, it just is exciting and overwhelming sometimes to see what can happen when somebody catches it. I needed some plumbing done. It's been about 5-6 years ago. And you ever had that time where the plumber or person comes and you're real busy, so you don't have a lot of time for much of a conversation? Now, that's rare for me, but I was just busy this day. Well, the plumber comes to the door, a young black man, and he kind of gives me the RCA dog. You know, he sort of tilts his head, and I was just busy, man. So I was kind of like, come on in, showed him the sink. He had to unclog a sink or something. As he comes downstairs, he's got his tablet, and he goes, did you do a speech at Stratford High School like 12 years ago? I said, probably. He said, did you talk about, don't just think about being the player on the team, be the owner of the team? I said, yeah, that was me. He said, I thought so. He said, man, you don't even know. Me and my two best friends, all three of us have our own business because of that speech from when we were in high school. And we're like 30 years old.
Wow.
Isn't that it?
That's awesome.
Isn't that what it's about?
That's it.
Just letting that audience, letting that person know, you got it. You can do this.
Folks, we're hanging out with Derek Young. His friends call him DY.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what I like to call him, right? So DY, and he's the ultimate faith-driven culture strategist, speaker, author, and community leader. He's also the president of YMG Enterprises. Keep up with him online at DerekYoungSpeaks.com and on Instagram and other socials at DY Speaks. All right. So DY, when did you, like, again, starting school early, okay, achieving high levels of things at an extremely young age. Tell me how you kind of positioned yourself where you're at in the market. And I, honestly, a fun question just for me would be like, you know, if you could go back and do it all over again, what would you change? You know, people ask me that a lot, and I'm like, I wouldn't change anything. I could have been where I'm at 10 years ago, but I'm not.
Right.
But I'm very grateful for where I'm at today. You know, there was a couple things I might tweak, maybe like not get in trouble there, or, you know, so a few things like that.
Yeah.
But like, you know, how did you know, like, everybody wants to be a speaker until they figure out what's involved in it. Everybody wants a podcast. They're like, man, this is work.
Right.
It's all work.
That's right.
Right. So, because you had to provide for yourself, provide for your family. Obviously, you're a man that understands his value, and you're
Right.
going to get it. How did you get to where you're at? Like, did you paint this path, and would you change anything?
Yeah, a couple things I think that were significant. And first, the number one answer is the grace of God. That's really the answer, period. Now, I can give you some bullet points.
Yeah.
Foundationally, my mother and my grandmother were not highly educated, but they were highly intelligent. They were highly focused. They were highly disciplined. So everybody that came around me as a kid was a worker, was a decent person. So just my basic foundation was you work and you treat people well.
Right.
I wound up getting sent to a phenomenal high school. So that high school gave me a chance to rub shoulders with the mayor of St. Louis's son, the number 3 person at Emerson Electric's son. So I got to start seeing some things in real life that I only saw on television. And choosing business communication as a major, I wound up starting my career, Nick, at the Federal Reserve Bank in the mid-'80s. When the Fed was probably right at $300 billion in assets. So as a 20-year-old internal auditor and then 23-year-old economic research analyst for the Fed for a $300 billion institution that was the central bank, man, I tell people that work was like getting 2 MBAs because I saw every functional area of the system. I did internal audit that was financial, operational, and systems audits. So my foundational experience as a business person, I mean, there's no way I could have planned it. It just was, that's what I said, God's grace. But from a speaking standpoint, I saw Zig Ziglar in Dallas in 1989. And it's me and 14,999 other people. And that man was up there talking. And I'll never forget, Nick. He said, friends, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And man, when I heard that, I was like, who is this dude? I literally, we talked about self-talk, Nick. I'm sitting there among 14,000 people. I pointed at the stage and I said out loud, that's what I'm going to do. And 3 years later, I was helping one of my inroad students who couldn't afford the tuition at his high school, and they were going to not let him graduate. So I had to go on his behalf and try to intercede for him. And I wound up meeting the board chair of a local high school. And that board chair and I had an immediate connection because when he told me his last name, Glennon, I said, I'm from St. Louis. The only time I've ever heard of Glennon is Cardinal Glennon Hospital. He goes, that's my great uncle.
Wow.
So, of course, we were boys at that point. Well, long story short, he meets me and he says, Derek, you strike me as somebody who might want to do more than what you're currently doing. He goes, what do you want to do in the future? And I told him, I said, I want to be a motivational speaker. He said, do you know Joe Calloway? I said, no, don't know him. He introduced me to Joe Calloway, and Joe Calloway became my mentor.
Okay.
In 1993. And he's still friends of mine to this day. And he told me a lot, but the number one thing he told me, he said, nothing beats stage time. Nothing beats stage time.
I agree with that.
Fancy website, great. Beautiful concepts, great. You got to get on stage. And I know you know this about me, Nick, but one of the other things that was phenomenally helpful to me is I was always funny, trying to be funny, if you will. And I don't know if you remember that first Eddie Murphy special that came out with the red leather jumpsuit.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
There was a group of us in college watching it, and I was predicting some of his punchlines.
Okay.
And my friend goes, dude, you are hilarious, man. You should get in a comedy, a talent show at the school. I didn't even know they had a talent show. Got in this college talent show, won second place doing comedy. Graduated from college. I go to my first comedy show in Evansville, Indiana. First comic, I could take him. Second comic, I got him. Third comic, remember Star Search?
Oh, yeah.
The third guy had won on Star Search 8 times in a row.
That's big.
Dude, I went up to him. This is 1986. I go up to him after the show. I go, dude, you were phenomenal. That was amazing. What kind of money can you make doing this? He said, I made 60 grand last year. That's a 1986, 60 grand.
Yeah.
I said, how you get started? He said, where do you live? I said, Kansas City. He said, Stanford & Sons. Yeah. He said, every time they have amateur night, go until you have a 5-minute act. For 7 months, I went every Monday and did an act, and eventually they had me open. And then they were going to have me start middling, and that's when I actually moved to Nashville. But that comedy background is everything when it comes to speaking. And this is going to sound silly, but you know what the number one thing comedy taught me, Nick?
What's that?
Is to not take yourself seriously, but take what you do seriously.
Facts, yeah.
And my feeling is that resonates with people when they sense that you're up there, not about you, like I said earlier, but it is all about what I told every new comic who would come to me for advice is all you care about is did they get it? That's all you care about. Now, yeah, you want to look neat. You want to look presentable. You want to look fly. Oh, okay, that's cool. But ultimately, did they get it? Yeah. So those are the things that have really, I think, positioned me to be 17 years doing this full time.
Man. The Hit Streak is powered by our partners at HitLab Creative Studios. Whether it's launching your brand new podcast, rebranding your current podcast, or taking advantage of any of their other content packages specifically for your social media needs, the HitLab is a one-stop shop for you. Visit hitlabstudio.com for more. At the end of the day, musicians, their dream is to do music full time.
Right.
They don't have to bag groceries or bartend or whatever else they'd have to do. They want to make the life that they want to, have the life they want to create through music, through that outlet, right? And you've been able to do that as a speaker. Now, I was talking to my nephews the other day when they were at the house. They're at that tender young age where just out of high school, decided college wasn't for them at this time because they didn't know what they want to do in life. And they're just really kind of stumbling around, trying to figure out what their purpose is, right? And I think that's everybody has to do that to a certain degree. But, and just giving them some advice, I was like, hey, man, if you're not pulled in any certain direction, there's something that you just feel called to do, like you were called to speak, right? So they haven't found that calling yet. They're still looking for it. I'm like, so at the end of the day, you've got to live. So are you chasing a certain career, or are you chasing a dollar amount of security? And they haven't found the career yet, so they're chasing a dollar amount. I'm like, cool, well, where can you get that? Like that. So they're confused as to like, well, I don't know if I want to do that. Well, you don't know what you want to do. That's right. So you got to go where the money is, right?
Yeah. Nick, there's an exercise I've been using for my executive coaching clients for a long time. And it's very simple in execution, but it is profound an impact. And what I tell people to do is take some time by yourself. No music, no distractions, just you, yourself, and a blank piece of paper. And write down what in your mind are the 5 greatest accomplishments of your life. And the key is not what you think other people think they will be, or what you think the right answer is in the eyes of other people. What do you think they are? Now, for me, for the longest, the short version of this is I worked at a summer camp. After I worked in the Upward Bound program, my next job was as a summer camp counselor for kids from abusive, foster care, bad situations. And the long story short is we had a kid in the camp who had attempted suicide twice in his life. And I just knew, and again, I have to give God all the credit because there's no way I would have known this at 18 years old, that kid was going to be as extreme as possible to try to get us to show we didn't care about him. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. And I knew I had to just say, no matter what that kid said, I'm going to take it like, I like ice cream. How about you? Well, he came at me with some crazy stuff. And all I did was just let it ride. And then I would compliment everything he did. Long story short, Nick, at the end of the camp, when that kid was about to go back to whatever he was about to go back to, it's a 15-year-old white kid. This is 1981. And he ran down the middle of that bus and he jumped up on me. He said, man, you're the first person to make me feel good about myself.
Wow.
I'm 60 years old, brother. I'll never forget it. The second part of the exercise is to write down what you feel are the 5 greatest compliments you've ever received. When I was 5 years old, Nick, I had this epiphany. I don't know if you can have epiphanies at 5, but that's what I'm going to call it. And I just went outside our little unit in the Blue Mire Housing Project, and I sat on the curb, and I looked around at some of the people that lived around me. I was 5, man. And I remember saying out loud, there it goes again, I am never going to be a problem for my mother. Matter of fact, I'm never going to argue with my mother.
Wow.
I was 5, man. My mom passed away.
Did you say that out loud or was it a thought?
I said it out loud.
That's what I thought.
I did. I said it out loud. My mom passed away due to ALS in December of 21.
Okay.
February of 22, I'm back in St. Louis with her former boss, who was her best friend, getting some of her affairs situated. And as I'm getting ready to literally leave her house and get back on the plane and fly back to Nashville, she goes, Derek, she said, do you know what your mother used to always say about you? And my mom's friend's name is Alvia. I said, no, Alvia, what? She said, Jenny would say, Alvia, do you know that boy had never caused me a problem in my life?
Wow.
Right.
My mama can't say that.
That exercise, man, it'll help you center around what's really significant. And that's what I would offer to your nephews, man. It's just, I don't care what jobs you do, but it helps you get that calling. That's what I mean. The career is the job, it's the business, it's the volunteer work. But the calling is that unique impact that only you can make, that's meant for you to make it. And I found that 2-part exercise is a good way to help people get at that.
You know, I have a lot of thoughts. And one of the things that I'm starting to figure out about myself, raising kids and everything else is thoughts aren't proclamations. They're ideas, so to speak. But something actually becomes real the moment that I commit to it out loud, especially if I do it in a public place or to somebody else.
That's
all right?
right.
But at worst, it's to myself. So literally my dad used to say the same joke. Oh, I've lost 1,000 pounds in my lifetime, the same 10 pounds over and over and over again.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I catch myself, you know, I'd get to that place in fitness, let's just use for example, where I'd get to that spot where good enough was good enough, and it wasn't what I'd aimed for, but it was close. And if I was an addict, it would be like a relapse, so to speak, and then go back into it. So, and dude, I love, like, sweets are my thing. Dude.
Right.
I love them. And when I take stuff like melatonin or whatever else for sleep, it always like I want to eat. I want to eat. So it's a tough. Do I sleep tonight or do I?
Yeah.
What do I want to do? But the bottom line, the reason I'm saying all that is because I'll think all the time, over and over again, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be better, and so on and so forth. And then I won't. And the next day I'm mad. I'm disappointed in myself. I'm like, man, like I set myself back another day. You know, God gave me a day and I wasted it, so to speak. But when I always get to that breaking point where I'm going to bust through, and it always comes with a vocal reinforcement out loud, usually to somebody.
To somebody else. Nick, here's the process. First, we have to think it. All right? Sometimes we generate the thought. Sometimes the thought sort of comes from who knows where.
Yeah.
First, we think it. Then, Nick, we have to formulate it. Now, this is happening in nanoseconds.
Yep.
Then we formulate it. Am I going to say it with a sigh? Am I going to say it with a frown? Am I going to say it pumping my fist? These are nanosecond decisions. Then we what? We utter it. It comes out.
Yep.
Here's the crazy piece. Then we hear it. That's where either the plus or the minus comes from. We hear it. I've had so many clients over the years where they say, well, DY, I'm just not good in front of groups. Well, I know why you're not. And they'll go, why? Because you probably have told yourself that 7,000 times.
That's right.
So what I'd rather you do is either don't say anything or say, I am getting better in front of groups.
People don't understand. It took me a long time. Like when you keep saying those things that are negative about yourself, like those reps build up, and they like, you know what I mean? It's not like they say that the Grand Canyon was formed over millions of years of just one simple stream, small, just the ripple effect over and over and over with enough time.
Yep.
And it drives me crazy. And it's like, the word try is not allowed to be used in my house.
Love it.
Because nobody that's trying to do anything ever does it. You're either doing it or you're not, right?
I like that.
And my son, the story is he asked, I think it was my sister, where, she was working on a breakthrough, and she said, I'm trying to do something. He said, well, do you try to get a glass of water, or do you just go get one?
I love it.
And she was like, man, it's really good. But bottom line is we're not trying to do anything. We're either doing it or we're not.
I talked about rap earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick, whether you like rap or not, whether you like rap music, whether you like rappers, whether you like what they're rapping about, that is a group of people who have figured it out.
Yep.
You never hear a rapper say, I'm broke, I'm poor, I'm without a crib. It is always, I got money, I got watches, Now, whether you like what they're rapping about is not even my point.
Yeah.
They have proven that you will get what you repeatedly say and focus on. And when you add some effort to it, you have just set yourself on fire.
Man.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. Okay, so I've spent the majority of this episode selfishly talking about things that I was wanting to talk about, but I speak for a wonderful audience. All right, but with the with the little bit of time that we have left today, I want to talk about kind of like, you're here for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay, you're here for a reason, and that reason is not to talk about what you've already done. It's because you've got a fire. You've got a fire that has been lit, and you are looking towards the future. You're making a significant push toward your next chapter in life and business. Okay. And as a matter of fact, folks, check him out online, because there's some pretty amazing stuff hitting all of his socials on a daily basis right freaking now, right? So again, on socials, it's at DY Speaks. DerekYoungSpeaks.com is the website. You can find links to everything on all his socials there as well. But DY, talk to me about, like, what's the next chapter look like for you? What are you doing? Like, what problems are you solving for other folks?
This is a phenomenal question, because I believe God put me on this planet to help individuals and organizations go from good to great to legendary. Now, legendary does not mean, look at me, look at how wonderful I am, look at my car, look at my appointments. No, legendary is hundreds of thousands of people are living better and doing better as a result of what you did. So I'm at a point now, I don't know if it's turning 60 or what, but I'm at a point in my life.
You're about to turn 60?
Come on, brother, let's go. But right now, man,
Dude.
It is about, how do I help every person I can possibly help with that conversation I just had with that CEO? How can I help every vice president of any function with the message I just delivered to that corporation? It's, how do we get information that helps, that works, that's proven into the ears, the minds, and the hearts of people? And that's really what the fire is. Now, I've done this my whole life, but now through my partnership with great folks like yourself, I see a way to really exponentialize that and really make it so that I had a coaching session with a college executive the other day. And he said, DY, man, he said, I take work home with me every day and I can't help it. And my wife and my 3 kids, he said, I want to stop doing it. I said, hey, bro. I said, guess what? Don't stop doing it. He goes, what? I said, don't stop taking the work home with you. He goes, what? I said, no, what we're going to do is you're going to go to each member of your family and ask them, what can I do to improve the quality of our relationship? And I said, you're going to be shocked. With one person, it might be, just play video games with me, Daddy. With somebody else, it might be, will you read me stories? With your wife, it might be, I just want you to hear me think out loud. I said, if you'll focus on the quality of your relationships and make that the priority, you'd be amazed at how you can still do those things in your head at home because you're doing what matters most to the people at home.
The Hitstreak is powered by Team Hyder. Team Hyder has been serving you for 11 years and has racked up over 20 national and local awards for excellence in all areas. When it comes to finding the right health plan, we need to consider your family's needs and your family's budget. That's what we do to serve you. To look further and to book an appointment, visit teamhyder.com. You uncovered something right there that has been like one of the most common topics or subjects amongst entrepreneurial type people and everything else, and that is the old phrase of work-life balance, which does not, I don't think it truly exists.
Let me speak on that, brother. Nick, man, you hit the nerve. I'm a word person, and semantics matter. I know what people mean when they say work-life balance.
Come on.
But guess what? If you take, I'm a client person. I had a client, chief learning officer of a $38 billion organization. We sat down and I said to this woman, I said, how many hours a week do you think about this, Nick, drive to and from work every week? How many hours a week do you work? And then how many hours a week do you think about work? She totaled it up. She said 120. I said, listen to me. Balance is mathematically impossible. You ain't gonna get no balance. I said, you got kids? Ha! Balance.
That's right.
Many of us taking care of our parents. Balance. These dogs of nowadays, man, these dogs of today, Nick, I want to go tell all the dogs from the 1970s, I'm sorry, we didn't know. We just gave them a chain and a bowl, man. These dogs getting injections. They got counselors. They got therapists.
Botox even.
Botox for dogs. You know what I'm saying? The concept is you don't necessarily try to shoot for balance because it's impossible. I have a workshop called Work-Life Balance is a Pipe Dream. That's the literal name of the message. But what you want is what I said a second ago. Do you have quality in all your meaningful relationships?
Man.
My good friends, Bob Fisher, who was president of Belmont University here in Nashville, and his wife, Judy, they wrote a book called Life is a Gift. You know the subject matter of the book, Nick? They interviewed hospice patients.
Oh, wow.
How about every single person talked about what? Relationships.
Yep.
Not my job, not my paycheck, my big house on the hill. So what I teach is, no, you're not going to find balance. You just aren't. You aren't going to find it. Quit setting yourself up for that disappointment. But you can find a deeper, more loving relationship with the people that matter. You can find more significance in those community volunteer activities you want to do because you prioritize them differently. And I just have found, man, people at every level, because I work with all levels, Nick, CEOs, executives, middle management, supervisor, frontline, emerging leaders, you name it. At every level of the organization, when people really get that philosophy, it totally transforms their life.
So that, dude, this is huge, what we're talking about right now. And honestly, man, nobody's speaking to this that I can find. And I spend a lot of time, I'm paying attention to a lot of what's going on. And work-life balance, again, it's you either chase it and you never attain it, or you just don't, it's a fictional thing, but you just redefined it for me, and I've been looking for this.
Good.
So thank you.
Oh, yes, sir.
Work-life balance. The problem is we're measuring it with time.
That's right.
And truly, you just measure it with relationships.
That's exactly right.
Oh man,
Nick,
that's
think
so
about
good.
it. If I said, Nick, I got $200,000 in my pocket, and I'm gonna pay for you and your any three people you want to go see the Yankees. You're gonna be in the box, and you're gonna meet all the top players from the Yankees. Who are you gonna take? Are you gonna take some folk you don't know?
That's right.
Or are you gonna take some folk you're not gonna have a good time with? No. You're going to take people you know, they're going to enjoy that experience with you, and it's going to be something you never. That's what we need to focus on. And this is going to sound funny. I had an executive coaching client, very high level woman. She said to me in our first meeting, she said, DY, I need help with reconnecting with my son. She said, I'm the breadwinner. My husband stays home with him. She said, and I'm losing touch with my son. I said, how old is your son? She said, he's 8. I said, what's your son into? She said, video games. I said, all right, first coaching session. I want you to spend 2 times a week, 10 minutes per time, playing video games with your son. She said, I don't like video games. I said, I didn't ask you what you like.
That's right.
It's about what your son like. 1 month later, she comes back. She goes, oh my God. That's how she opened the coaching session. Oh my God. She said, DY, the first time he looked at me like I was a Martian. She said the second time, not so Martian-y, but still kind of Martian. She said third time, he was a little more forgiving. The fourth time, she said by the 6th time, I was enjoying playing the video games. She said by the 10th time, I actually beat him one time. She said 2 nights ago, we were coming home from school. She said, I pulled the car up in the driveway. I shut off the car, and he goes, Mom, how do you know if a girl likes you or not? She said, we talked for 2 hours. So that concept of slowing your life down based on the perspective and priorities of your loved ones, it's a game changer, man.
That's it. And I get to that place sometimes where I get pulled in so many directions, and you know, wife or kids need something, and I'm like, you know what? All right, let me just put things in. Let's get real for a second. I call everybody that ain't them.
Right.
I'm like, hey, look, I'm needed here more. So we're going to punt, reschedule, or it just is what it is.
That's it.
I'm not going to be there. And when I get to that place, the stress levels leading up to that moment are intense. They are high. However, once I hit that place where it's like, I know what I got to do. I know what I'm going to do. And I just tell people that, it's like the most relaxing thing.
Yeah.
When it happens, I go from level 10 stress to 0 stress, all because of a decision.
But you know what, Nick, I'm going to say, my kids are all adults now. But, you know, my wife and I, Allison, we have 4 kids. And you also have to be very creative. One day I was sitting in the kitchen with my kids. They were all doing their homework around the kitchen table. And I just had this thought. I said, hey, kids, do y'all realize y'all are ignoring me? And they go, what? And they're all looking at each other like, what? I was like, y'all see Dad? I'm sitting right here. Why are y'all ignoring me? They were like, Dad, we're doing our homework. I was like, oh, so you get to do your schoolwork at home? Duh, yeah, Dad, yeah. I said, so what if I did some of my work at home? They were like, that would be fine. So, Nick, I started doing my homework while my kids were doing their homework.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy? Trying to get something out of a kid sitting next to him in a car. How was your day? But you get a kid bent over a kitchen table with a pencil doing homework. Dad, you will not believe what Sabrina did today. What'd she do, son? But I was getting work done while they were getting work done.
That's right.
But we were still interacting. Yeah. But guess what? It was on their terms.
That's right.
So that other piece of that for me is, how can I find a creative way to connect with the people that matter most?
Man, that's so good. That's so good. This is why I was so excited about getting you in today, DY. And you know when Oprah was in her heyday, she had Dr. Phil, and she would bring Dr. Phil on for regular things, and then it turned into Dr. Phil's own thing. He became his own monster, so to speak.
That's
right. But for a long time, he was just in acting, if you're not a regular cast member, but you make regular appearances, there's a term for that. Do anybody know what that is? I should
know, but it'll come to me.
We'll get there. recurring cast member. That's it.
Very nice.
So Dr. Phil became a recurring guest or cast member on Oprah.
Right.
Dude, there's honestly, this episode would need to be 3-4 hours to get what I want to get out of it. So I'm going to need you to become a recurring guest on the Hitstreak.
Done.
Boom. So we can do that. But with the time that we have today, with the couple minutes that we got left, there's a lot of folks listening to this today that are like, man, I like that guy. I'm glad I got to get introduced to that guy today. I wonder if I could work with that guy. That's one of the biggest things that I feel like people fall short with on podcasts is when people like what they hear and they're like, I agree with what you're saying. I need that in my life, but they don't know how to take what action to take, or if they are who you actually work with and serve. Yeah. So if we could, they call, in today's terms, they call it an avatar, right? So who are you looking about? And please plug your book when you do that too, folks. You got to check out his book online. I'm gonna let him tell you the title and everything around that. But DY, who is it that you're looking to work with more of in 2025?
On an organizational basis, I'm looking for meeting planners and decision makers who are seeking a keynote, who can bring a message or any message that inspires their team to not be stuck anymore.
And if you would, a couple of notable household names that you've done this for in the past.
Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, Bridgestone, Habitat for Humanity,
you mentioned Tractor Supply too.
Tractor Supply.
Yep.
On the individual or group level, if a person says, I've got a team, I've got a group that needs to be unstuck, but we really need a longer term solution, then I do what I call a culture strategy. And the beauty is, Nick, because of the exposure God has given me, I've worked in 43 industries. So it doesn't matter the industry. I've worked again with the Federal Reserve System, which in the 80s was at $300 billion in assets. So it doesn't matter the size. But I've been gifted, I think, to help a team quickly come in and put together people skill strategies that transform not only how people behave, but how they perform and the results they get. And if people want to reach me, I try my best to be the link. So they can literally email me, dy@DerekYoungSpeaks.com, because I want to be the best person they have ever worked with. When I was in the corporate world, I would tell my new employees on my team, my goal is to be the best boss you've ever had. Like I said earlier, when I work with a new client, I say to them, my goal is to be the easiest person you've ever worked with. So if you've got a group that needs to create a winning culture, if you've got a group that needs to replace old, negative, outdated behavior with quality human behavior that really creates a sense of belonging, that really energizes people to give their best at work, I'm your dude. That's my expertise. That is my calling. And it's really all I care about doing.
There you have it, folks. There you have it. All right, tell me a little bit about the book. I mentioned that you were an author.
Yeah, I wrote a book, released it in 2020, called "Make My Hindsight Your 2020." So obviously, a big play on words there to say, here's my career, here's what worked, here's what didn't. And we talk about things like, my favorite chapter in the book is politics aren't bad, people are. And what we teach is politicking is building and wielding influence to achieve a goal. Period. You could either be Osama bin Laden, politicker, or Martin Luther King, politicker. What I find is so many people are limiting themselves, Nick, because they don't play politics because they think it's what? Bad.
Yeah.
Another chapter in the book talks about meetings. Most people think the purpose of a meeting is to have a discussion. No. Purpose of a meeting is to make a decision.
Yes.
And when you change that framework, I'm talking about Dollar General, Cracker Barrel, places I work, big companies, it sets things ablaze. Because see, the parking lot and the water cooler, that's for the discussion.
That's right.
But the meeting, and the reason people have so many meetings, Nick, is because the only time I think about this topic is what?
During
when
the
I
meeting.
get to the meeting.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
So that book, Make My Hindsight Your 2020, it's on Amazon, and it's directed at anybody who says, I want to have greater impact. I just want to have greater impact, and I want to have greater joy when I do it.
Yep.
We got too many people, Nick, working their heads off, working crazy hours, maybe making great money, and they have zero joy.
Yeah.
What's the use? So this book balances those things between how you think about your calling in life, how you run a meeting, how you actually do become a person who understands what politics is, but at the same time, how you do it in a way that you maintain your integrity and dignity. So that book is there to help people, and everybody that has reported to me that they have read that book immediately walks away a changed person, because I'm just giving straight practical steps, concepts, and ideas from nearly 50 years and working in the workforce.
DY, any as we bring this episode to a close, any final thoughts you'd like to leave everybody with?
Well, first thing, man, I just want to pray God's continued blessings on you, my friend.
Thank you.
I appreciate your heart. I appreciate your commitment to excellence. I appreciate your transparency. And I just pray God will continue to bless everything you put your hands to.
Thank you. Man, that means the world. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. The Hitstreak is powered by Rack Financial. When it comes to your credit card merchant processing, Rack Financial is efficient, reliable, and trusted. At the end of the day, when it comes to processing your credit card payments, they make it simple, the way it's supposed to be. Check out Rack Financial. Once again, folks, his first appearance of many upcoming on the Hitstreak. Faith-driven culture strategist, speaker, author, community leader, and president of YMG Enterprises, Derek Young, also known as DY. Check him out online, DerekYoungSpeaks.com. Email him about booking him as a keynote speaker at your next event, DY@DerekYoungSpeaks.com, and catch him on social at DY Speaks. DY, thank you so much again, man. You just make every room brighter that you walk into. It's always a good day when you're around. That's fact.
Thank you, bro.
That
Appreciate
is fact. Folks, once again, thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Hitstreak. I'm your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.